Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Candidates Forum. My name is Charlie Papillo. Many of you may remember me from a morning talk show on WVMT. So it's great to be here once again in front of a microphone and talking with folks and talking the issues. So happy to be here this evening. Let me please introduce Marie Houghton. She is AARP Volunteer State President, and she's going to give you an overview of tonight's forum. Please.
Figure out how I can just see everybody. First of all, I just want to welcome you all to being here. It's going to be, I think, a very, very interesting evening. I am thrilled to see you all. It's an opportunity for us to get, you can't, try this. Not on?
You won't be able to listen.
Okay, there. I was afraid I was going to have to use my big girl voice here. Anyway, we have an opportunity to get to know the candidates for our Burlington City Council. The 11 candidates are vying for 4 open district seats. The livability of our communities has long been a focus of AARP Vermont. How our cities and towns prepare for and accommodate an aging population has a profound effect on the health of a community and the quality of life today and in the future for residents of all ages. We hope to explore a number of critical issues, including transportation, housing, job growth, and mobility. We're very fortunate tonight to be able to partner with Burlington Business Association, who shares our commitment to educating voters on how these candidates feel and stand on important livability issues before you go to the polls in March. Our hope is to explore a number of critical issue areas important to the vitality of Burlington that both our organizations care about, as well as giving you an opportunity to ask your questions. We encourage you to ask questions of the candidates by filling out an index card, which you can get over in the back by the bar. They can be found also at the registration table. Some of you have already done that because we have a little basket that's collecting them up there. Just provide your name and the question that you have and return it to the basket or perhaps to a staff member. If there's anybody that's collecting the index cards, would you kind of raise your hand so we know where you are? Okay, over there. Great. Thank you. If you want to know more about the candidates that are here tonight, you can find some background information in the program. They are available, again, out in the front. Our moderator tonight is Charlie Papillo, which you already met. He's in charge. Wasn't there a TV show called Charlie in Charge? Charles in Charge, yeah. You're in charge. He's going to ask the candidates questions and manage the format, which has been designed to provide an equitable opportunity for each candidate to participate in the forum. Tonight's event is meant to be an education forum. We ask our audience members to respect the spirit of the event, as well as our candidates and other audience members, and refrain from any rallying, heckling, or loud cheering. We want to use our time efficiently as possible and promise to get to as many questions as we can. When we're done, we invite you to stay with us for a while for a dessert reception at the end of this forum, which is going to be around 7:15. Thank you all for being here, and Charlie,
all right,
you're in charge.
Okay. Thank you, Marie. I'm sure Bill Keogh was a little upset to find out about there's no heckling allowed tonight, Bill, but just keep it low. Also, I want to introduce our timekeeper who is in the front here. This is very important. We want to move things along at a fast pace, allow the candidates enough time to make their statements with each of the questions. If Bob would just kind of raise your hand there. Bob Henneberger. Now, the candidates have 60 seconds to respond to each question. We drew numbers before the event started tonight, so it's already been determined which district will go first and who goes in each district first with each question, and it changes each time. Could get a little confusing. I have numbers in front of me, so if I do get out of line, just let me know, candidates, please. So you have 60 seconds to respond. Bob will hold up a card when you have 30 seconds left. And it says 30 seconds on it. You can see that. That's what's important. And then when there's 10 seconds left, he will hold up another card. Please, within 10 seconds, wrap up your comments. And if you don't, we'll just ask you to, we can shut your mics off too, but we won't do that. So is everyone ready to get started?
Yes.
Okay. So we had the drawing this evening. And the first round of questioning is about housing. And the North District got the first draw. So we're going to go with North first. We also, the candidates also drew numbers, and Keenan Christensen is going to be going first. They will all have the same question. Keenan will go first on this. First, let me just say this about housing. Safe, accessible, and affordable home is a basic need of all Vermonters. It is a cornerstone of a vibrant economy and healthy community. In 2016, it was estimated that approximately 54% of renters and 30% of homeowners in Burlington pay a third or more of their income on housing costs, which is further exacerbated by a low vacancy rate. The cost and availability housing is a top concern for many residents, for older adults who want to age in place and are concerned about accessibility and affording their home, to young professionals unable to find an affordable rental unit in a walkable neighborhood. Studies show that a range of age groups want to live in a walkable downtown location, which is reflected in Burlington's high rents and very low vacancy rate. It is clear our community needs more housing. With that said, our first question, which is going to the North District, and Keenan Christensen, you have to answer this question along with your other fellow candidates. Do you support updating the accessory dwelling unit, ADUs, ordinance by removing barriers that prevent homeowners from building additional housing? If yes, why? And if no, what are the ways you would diversify and grow our housing mix? Christensen.
So one of the things that I've consistently heard when I've been knocking doors, and I've knocked on over 1,000 doors at this juncture, is that housing affordability is the top issue for Burlingtonians. Property taxes are on the rise, and folks definitely feel like there is not sufficient housing to put downward pressure on rents. I'm in support of whatever zoning regulations we need to change to ensure that we can access more housing, but there's an additional thing that we need to be doing, which is we need to be paying attention to the type of new services that we're providing to Burlingtonians. We just approved the high school bond upgrade and the wastewater treatment upgrade. We need to be very cautious about taking on any additional upgrades until we pay down those services, so that folks living on a single income don't see their property taxes skyrocketing, and so that they can continue to stay in their homes. The second thing that we need to do is, when we're upgrading our housing, we need to be upgrading our infrastructure as well, because if we're not expanding the sewer lines and the water lines to accommodate the increased use, that's how we end up with sewage in the lake, and that's inexcusable.
Thank you. Keenan. Erica Bundy-Reddick drew the second round, and she gets to answer that same question. Do I need to repeat it?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes, because I'm dealing with this myself right now. I'm trying to purchase my grandparents' home, which was listed as a 2-unit with an accessory apartment, but you can't get a mortgage on that. So I'm trying to buy out my aunt, and I can't. And what's going to happen is that house is going to go on the market, and it's going to get sold to an investor who doesn't have to worry about zoning issues. So this is very near and dear to my heart, especially because my mother is 67, and I'm preparing to take care of her. My grandmother, retired in that home, and now we're going to lose our family's property because of some weird glitch in the 1960s from zoning. Come on. And it's already been said, we have to deregulate consciously and thoughtfully so that we can actually build more housing, because that's why we have a housing shortage, because we can't build housing.
Erica, thank you. And finally, Franklin Paulino, do you need the question repeated?
No. I want to say thank you for having us all here. What a great opportunity to be here, speaking with everybody who decided to show up here. And I think it's a great forum to have everybody together here in the same room and talking. As for the building of additional housing, I think that I have early on discovered that that was a necessary need in our community. And if you go to my Twitter page, one of the first tweets that I was very passionate about, that when I started running as a new candidate, I thought of a city fund that would allow for somebody to get up to $75,000 in loans for zero interest for 5 years to help build additional housing on their property. So I support the permitting and zoning streamlining that's on the ballot in order to also further those building additional housing. However, I agree that we need to be careful with stormwater drainage and be conscious of what trees and other avenues, gravel yards that we can plant.
Time's up. Okay, thank you. The second question goes to the South District, and our first person to answer is Mohammed Jafar. The question for you have a different question. Do you think current inclusionary zoning ordinance is the right tool for addressing affordability? If yes, why? If not, how would you propose to improve Burlington's approach to ensuring that affordable housing options are available to everyone, especially older adults living on a fixed income, people with disabilities, and working families? Mohammed.
So I think yes. Thank you. The zoning currently that we have, I do feel is effective, and it forces a certain number of units to be affordable. And last year, voters voted on a 1% increase on luxury tax, or on luxury homes, so any house that is $500,000 or more. And that will increase resources for us that we can use in other capacities. I think we need to invest more in our housing trust. I also think that we need to invest more in the amount of resources that we put into the housing in itself, because we need warming shelters and we need more in the way of taking care of everyone.
Thank you, Mohammed. Joan Shannon has the opportunity to answer secondly.
Thank you. I do think that our inclusionary zoning ordinance is a very important tool in the tool chest, but it can't be the only tool. And we have recently updated that, thanks to Councillor Nodell, to try and make it more effective, because it is a little bit of trial and error, and we don't always know exactly how it is going to affect getting housing built, because we don't want to deter people from building housing by having an inclusionary ordinance that holds the bar too high for them to meet. But we need other tools as well. And something we had done in the past was have down payment assistance for multifamily housing. It would be great to try and get that back again. We need federal funding to do a lot of these types of programs, which is continually getting cut. And we need to continue to try to find new and creative ways to build more affordable housing and to make it more, what we have, more affordable.
Thank you, Joan. And Paco de Francis, you get the final response.
Yeah, so this is such a great question, and really at the heart of a lot of the issues I see in Burlington, at the heart of my campaign. So no, the inclusionary zoning, it was well-intentioned in the 1980s when they put it in place in the 1990s when some of it was reformed, but it has been a disaster for housing prices, for rental units, and it has only exacerbated wealth inequality between homeowners and renters in this city by artificially inflating the price of housing units, for sale housing, so that landlords and homeowners see more wealth gain. But it has been terrible for renters. What we have is the housing market is predominantly a private market, and we are shutting down with the inclusionary zoning ordinance. With it being so difficult to build multifamily units, we are making it so expensive for these developers to come in and inject more housing supply into the city, and that has just been having a terrible effect on and really been driving that rent burden that we've been seeing in the city.
Thank you, Paco. We move on now to the Central District, and the topic once again is still housing. And the question for you is, do you support reducing parking requirements for housing in the downtown district? If yes, why? If not, How do you think the city should balance the need for housing with land use and high costs associated with creating parking on redevelopment sites in the downtown district? And Jared Carter, you get to answer first.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my first comment would be, I don't think parking or otherwise, we're going to be able to build our way out of the housing crisis that we have in Burlington. There simply is not enough space, and that we might be able to nick around the edges, but we're just not going to be able to build our way out of it. That being said, I would support changing the way that we require parking based on development, as long as we invest in accessibility, additional options for walking, for biking. I think we need a free bus system downtown. Other cities around the country have tried it. It's boosted economic development. You look at Portland, Oregon, and its trolley system, completely free. People get out to the neighborhoods, they spend money, it grows business, economic vibrancy. And so I think it's got to be balanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Perry, you are next. Up. Rebuttal?
Yeah, I would like to have a rebuttal.
Okay, he has 30 seconds to rebut. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the candidates have one rebuttal card that they can use this evening, and they can use that at any time, and it's for 30 seconds only. So Paco de Francis is using his now.
So Mr. Carter mentioned that we can't build our way out of the housing crisis. We absolutely have to build our way out of the housing crisis. We're going to be looking at where can we inject a new, where can we reform our zoning, so where can we build housing that we can't build housing right now, such as the Pine Street Enterprise District, where the housing's banned, but we could add thousands of units of housing in there. We also need to look at building up. We need to build up, further in all neighborhoods of the downtown, not just the 3-block downtown mixed-use overlay district, but throughout the entire downtown, so we can, because that is the only way we're going to be able to solve this housing crisis.
All right, thank you, Paco. And so next we go to Perry Freeman.
As the city starts to grow and expand, of course, there's going to be greater demand for parking downtown. And I thought about this a lot on the way over here because this really, I think, has so much intersection into the transportation issue of, which I'm glad Jared mentioned, of increasing bike, walk, and public transit infrastructure. I think we have to be thinking about that as we continue to expand and grow as a city, because otherwise that's just going to lead to things like a lack of sufficient parking, congestion, and traffic. It's something I hear on the doors a lot, and it's something that people are starting to be concerned about. So I do also support a subsidized and a truly accessible transit system to take care of that. And if that means that we're slowly reducing parking, that means we also have to be replacing it with an alternative like walk, bike, and bus infrastructure.
Thank you, Perry. And the final, Jay Nodell.
Thank you very much. I just hope I'm going to be able to get out of the downtown parking spot that I parked in to get over here. The council came very close to actually dramatically reducing parking requirements for housing in downtown. And we kind of backed off a little bit and instead took the approach of, let's first better manage the parking that we have downtown, and then revisit downtown our parking policies around downtown. I'm very open to reducing parking requirements downtown. It is a big driver of housing development costs. I agree you have to couple that with alternatives to single occupancy vehicles to getting around. And finally, I would say it's not inclusionary zoning that has driven up housing development costs. It has not, but parking has. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Jane,
Jane.
I'm sorry. She's got a name tag right there, too. All right. Then I do know her.
Happens all the time.
I know. All right, and final question in the housing area. Went to District 4. Richard Dean will answer first, and followed by Jack Hansen. And the question, if elected, would you support additional larger-scale housing development in Burlington? If not, please explain why. Richard, you're first.
Thank you for that question. I would support the construction of housing at all scales in Burlington. from accessory dwelling units, which add one or one bedroom, to medium scale, small duplexes, to quads or triplexes, as well as large scales projects. And there's plenty of opportunity. I think that some have suggested tonight that we can't build our way. There are lots of sites. I would suggest you think about the Rite Aid parking lot. There's a spot where we could have, right now we have a one-story drugstore with a parking lot. We could have the drugstore still at that lower level and have 3 stories and multi-units of business and housing that exist above that. So I believe that there is an opportunity for us to find, and there are many other sites, and I won't mention them all, around that core of the downtown. But I think with imagination and with commitment, we can make a real difference in the amount of affordable housing and all kinds of housings that are available to us as citizens of the city.
Thank you, Richard. And Jack Hansen, you get the final word.
Thank you. Yes, I think we do need a diversity of housing, and part of the solution to our housing crisis is definitely building more housing and building more types of housing. We also have to look at the dynamics that are playing out in the current housing market, especially in East District. You have the University of Vermont having a tremendous impact on housing prices by not housing a big enough percentage of students on campus. So that's a huge piece of the puzzle that we need to look at. We need to pressure and also work with UVM to build more housing on campus for students. So I think that's a big part of the solution as well, in addition to building new diverse housing.
All right. Thank you, Jack. We move on to our next area of questioning, and that is economic development and job growth. The South District will go first. AARP's study on livability in Burlington shows that the majority of respondents value a city that offers a range of transportation choices. Half of Burlington residents surveyed believe there are street safety issues for bicyclists, while a plurality believes this to be true for people with disabilities, older adults, children, and pedestrians. Given their concern over street safety, many Burlington residents believe conditions can be improved for people who walk and bike. As a city, Burlington has struggled to evolve its transportation network to support a range of transportation choices. While older adults need transit options to continue living in their neighborhoods, younger adults are choosing not to drive or delaying obtaining driver's licenses. Plan BTV Walk Bike, Burlington's Walk and Bike Master Plan, lays out an ambitious timetable for transforming Burlington streets into a modern, multimodal transportation system. With that said, the first question for the South District goes to Joan Shannon. And Joan, that question is, what is the one action you would support to make downtown more walkable?
Well, I think that there's, it's hard to say the one thing, but I think maintenance of what we have would be the highest priority. I mean, it's difficult to get snow cleared, especially this time of year. And we hear a lot from people about needed improvements in maintenance. We also have a lot of new projects that we have installed for bike lanes and things like that this year. And we're having to provide maintenance for those as well, which has presented new challenges. So we are still in a process of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and I commend the Public Works Department for their efforts to kind of try some experimental things at low cost that we can adjust, and I support that effort.
All right, and I apologize. This topic is actually on transportation. It's not on economic development and job growth. We've just moved it around. Doesn't change anything, but just so you understand, that's the area that we are in. So once again, this is on transportation, and the next question would go to Paco DeFrancis. Paco, the same question. What is the one action you would support to make downtown more walkable?
Another great question. I think it's tough to say because I think there's a lot of actions that the city needs to take to make it more walkable and also add bikeable too. There's a lot we could do to improve bicycle transportation so people can bike to work, but bike into South Burlington, bike into Winooski where their job might be. So the primary action what I'd make it to make it more walkable, and this would also make our downtown more attractive, both to tourists as well as potential residents, is we have a couple busy streets, even in the winter time when there's less visitors, still very busy. We need wider sidewalks on some of those major thoroughfares such as College Street, from Church Street down to the waterfront where there's a lot of heavy traffic, and the sidewalks got to be only 3 feet wide on each side of the road. We've got to widen that. And then bike lanes. I'm the only candidate here to propose creating a new protected bike lane on St. Paul Street, connecting all the way down all the way down Shelburne Road into South Burlington. And we'll have to get rid of street parking to do that, but that'll go a long ways of making our streets more safer, more healthy, and
Paco? All right, thank you. And Mohammed, you get to wrap it up.
So in terms of transportation, the one action I would support is a better busing system. For starters, one of the biggest concerns that especially those that are elder make is that they have to take several buses to get to the grocery store, to get to the doctor's appointment. You're probably asking what that has to do with walking. If we have a better busing system, we're able to take a lot more vehicles off of the roads. We already have a busing system. It's just not effective enough. It's not timely. It's not. It is in some ways, affordable to many people, but it's not enough. And I think that with the idea of getting a better busing system that maybe is an electric busing system, we're able to take a lot more of those vehicles off the road so that people are safe. Downtown is not safe at all. There's kids walking left and right, and it's the least safest place in the entirety of this city. And I really do think that if we can figure out a better transportation system in terms of the busing system, we are able to kind of eradicate a lot of those concerns that people make in regards to biking and walking around the downtown space.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Can I use my rebuttal?
One rebuttal for Joan Shannon.
I just want to I'm going to use my rebuttal to say I agree with Paco that we do need wider sidewalks, and I actually have taken several initiatives over a course of years to assure that we have a minimum sidewalk size, because in some places our sidewalks are ridiculously narrow. And I think we have to require, if a new building is going up, sometimes it needs to be set back a little bit so that we have more space for pedestrians and more space on the sidewalk.
Thank you, Joan. Once again, we're on the area of transportation, and the Central District gets the next question. Perry Freeman will answer first. And the question is, in your opinion, does Burlington need more parking downtown today? And what about in 10 years?
It's a tricky question to answer because parking it's contentious because right now we just don't have a good enough alternative, and what's really needed is to revolutionize our transportation system. We are a growing city. More people are moving here. We don't have the capacity to continue with a car-dependent transportation system or single occupancy vehicles. So ultimately, the systems of tomorrow, the transportation systems of tomorrow, reduce the amount of parking over time. I think we can't just reduce parking and not give people an alternative. I think some folks have mentioned, I only bike and walk and bus. I don't have a car, especially for working people. It's just not sufficient as it is now. So as we reduce parking, we absolutely need to couple it with an alternative.
All right, thank you very much. And next response goes to Jay Nodell.
Thank you. This is very similar to the other question that we got, and I think that that people experience a lack of parking downtown. I mean, the general experience is it's hard to find a parking space, and yet we know that there are lots of excess parking spaces at any given point in time. So we're right now trying to address that through better management and getting information to people about where available spots are. And I think we should let that work and see how far we get. I would be reluctant to build a lot more parking downtown, in addition to what is going to come online when City Place Burlington comes online And I think after that, we should assess the situation and see where we are. But I think the more we can get people getting downtown in some other way than driving downtown and having that be an experience that works for them and that is affordable for them, the better off we'll be.
Thank you, Councilor Nodell. And finally, Jared Carter, you get the final word.
Yeah, parking is a serious problem downtown right now, and I think it will be in 10 years if we don't do the right thing. With, as Jane mentioned, City Place coming on board, I think the parking situation is even going to get worse. When you look at the number of parking spots that the project was required to include, I don't think it's going to solve the problem. It's going to make it worse. So we need to get creative, and we can talk about what should happen. We want more people to walk. We want more people to take buses. I think all of us would probably agree to that. But we've got to talk about specific ways we can incentivize. And I don't pretend to have all of the answers, but I think part of being on city council requires folks to come forward and affirmatively come up with ideas. So we could look at ways we could incentivize employees at local businesses in terms of tax incentives, perhaps for downtown businesses, city workers. We could incentivize them in some way to walk, to bike, to work. We can use market-based solutions, I think, to help solve this problem.
All right, thank you, Jared. And the next question goes to the East District. Jack Hansen will answer first. Richard Dean will follow. And the question for you is, if elected, what policies would you support relative to cars in the downtown and on the waterfront? Richard first. Oh, I'm sorry, Jack first.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. Thanks for keeping me honest.
So what policies would I support in terms of around cars?
Relative to cars in the downtown and on the waterfront.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure if you're referring again back to parking, but I think a lot of it does come back to parking. And I would agree with some of the sentiments that we've already heard is that the big picture is that we need to shift away from a transportation system that relies on single occupancy vehicles, and we need a robust transportation system that allows for strong public transit, walking and biking options, and that applies to the waterfront and throughout our city. So I think we need to look at policies that increase bike lanes, including protected bike lanes. We need to look at electric buses and improving our bus system, and we need to do a better job at maintaining our sidewalks so that folks can walk safely in all parts of the city, including the waterfront.
Thank you, Jack. And Richard, you get to final comment.
So cars on the waterfront. I think we all, as Burlingtonians, benefit from a beautiful lake that's down at the bottom of the hill. I work right there, and when I look out my window, what do I see? Cars at Perkins Pier. We see them parked at Main Street Landing as well. Cars should not be part of the experience that we have on our waterfront, so they need to be somewhere else. My sense is that what we need to do is link the parking resources that we have in the downtown to the waterfront with better pedestrian, better bus, better connections. And then in the downtown, I think we need to think about ways to stop cars from getting to the downtown by providing satellite parking at the perimeters of town where people enter. So at the south end, also where we come in from the interstate, ask people to park their cars and then use mass transportation to get ourselves to the downtown. Therefore, we make cars less of experience and certainly not as part of a beautiful experience that we want on the waterfront of our city.
All right, thank you very much. And finally, the North District gets to answer this question. And Erica Bundy-Reddick, you will go first. What is the one thing you think is key to making public transit a practical daily option for a wide range of Burlingtonians and to assure it will be accessible for everyone?
Not to be off topic, but thank you. Not to speak off topic, but I would say the one thing that I would do is bring more money into Burlington to pay for it. So having lived in Austin, Texas, and Los Angeles, I can tell you Burlington's public transportation actually is not that bad. And we're a city of 42,000 people. So when you're comparing, you want to make sure you're comparing apples and oranges. We want more buses. We want more availability. We want more, but we have to be able to pay for it. And the way that you pay for it is you increase the tax base. You don't increase taxes. You bring more businesses here who can pay for it. You bring more people here who can pay for it by building housing. These things all run around together. They're all connected. And if we don't have the money to pay for it, we don't have infrastructure. And I, for one, am not super psyched on being so dependent on the federal government for all of our transportation needs.
Thank you, Erica. And Franklin Paulino, you get to go next.
Thank you. So I agree that a trolley downtown would be a fantastic idea and a great option. Richard, I think, gave one of the best responses applicable here, which is that, I would support a satellite parking lot that has free shuttles and free parking. I know a lot of people that wouldn't want to park downtown if they had free parking all day, for that people who work not on an everyday basis, but maybe for a job for a single day, coming out of Montpelier, coming from neighboring towns. So I think what we need is bus pullouts. We need more bus pullouts on our streets. We need lighted crosswalks in certain areas, certainly in our neighborhood on North Ave. I support a car share service that is subsidized by the city, and as well as an app to communicate to people who are taking the bus that know that they're not going to be late, that they're not going to miss the bus, and do something like Uber has an app much like that that will be directly communicating with the user to make it more friendly, more accessible. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Keenan Christensen, final word.
Yeah, I agree with many of the comments that were made tonight, but I think we can do more. I think, one of the things that we need to do when it comes to public transportation is it needs to be affordable and it needs to be reliable. When I look at the bus service in the New North End, we have one bus line. It only goes up North Avenue, and we have a population that is bigger than Montpelier. When I think of, our older neighbors living out closer to the Winooski River and closer to the lake, who have to walk on sidewalks that are unplowed, that are icy, that have to walk along streets that are pothole ridden, we have got to get either an increased shuttle service out there, a small shuttle service out into the smaller neighborhoods to ensure that folks can get to the bus. But we're missing the big thing here is that we need to be engaging our community. I met Janet at the Heineberg Senior Center, who can't get down to the Flynn Center to watch subsidized free shows because she can't take the bus back. We need to be solving the transportation problem now, but we can also be engaging our community to say, you know what, Janet, I'm going down to that same show. I'll give you a ride back. That solves the problem now while we figure out the problem going forward.
Thank you, Keenan. All right, now we move on to economic development and job growth. Burlington often debates how and why it should grow its economy and add to its vitality. Data from the Kauffman Foundation indicates the highest rate of entrepreneurship in America has shifted to the 55 to 64 age group, with people over 55 almost twice as likely to be found successful companies as those between 20 and 34. At the same time, many creative and ambitious young people leave Burlington to start or continue their careers and their businesses elsewhere. Burlington's South End is a growing neighborhood with potential for housing, amenities, and services. In recent years, City Market is located there. Breweries, cideries have grown, the neighbors in the workplace for thousands of people, and small businesses have taken hold. Entrepreneurs of all ages need support and funding to grow their business. With that said, Central District will answer first. Jane Nodell, Councilor Jane Nodell will answer this question. As a member of City Council, how will you retain and attract employers with good-paying jobs that provide opportunities for Vermonters of all ages and skill sets? Councilor?
Okay, thank you very much. It's great to be reminded that successful entrepreneurs come from across the age spectrum, both all genders, expressions, all races, and so we need to always keep in mind that all kinds of people have great ideas and are talented, and we want to foster that kind of business potential throughout the population. I want to talk about Burlington Telecom, which is, I think, a tremendous economic development asset for the city. It was essential in the successful recruitment and retention of Dealer.com. That's an asset. Another asset is the University of Vermont and UVM Medical Center. which are really starting to look at new technologies and connecting with the city through BTV Ignite and other mechanisms to foster new business development. You to have a strong economy, you have to have products that you can sell nationally and internationally, and then that can support a strong service sector and higher wages and better benefits there.
Thank you, Councillor. Jared Carter, you get the next word.
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is quite simple, actually. What we need to do, and I think the data shows this, is we need to invest in people. The large-scale city place style development, Wall Street, they have plenty of money. We don't need to invest in them. We don't need to spend a bunch of money, time, and resources on that set. We need to invest in the new Americans in the Old North End who are opening businesses at a blistering pace. We can harness that. We can grow that. It's going to take city engagement, whether through a micro-lending program, partnerships with local financial institutions, small businesses, joint partnerships. We can harness that energy. That's where the jobs of the future are. That's where the data shows economic growth is going to come from. So that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Jared. And Perry, Perry Freeman, you get the final word.
I'm glad that the part of this question prompted a conversation around, that not all jobs are the same, and that when we talk about job growth, we need to talk about good paying jobs and quality jobs. I think that's really important to always bring into the conversation. Beyond that, I think in terms of job growth going forward, what we should be investing in is a clean economy, a clean energy economy, and a green economy, and incentivizing that, and also a zero waste economy. These are the jobs of tomorrow, and this is where we're seeing the largest, growth, in terms of, job growth sector. So, when I talk about things like weatherizing buildings or revolutionizing our transportation system, or, these kinds of things are what allow us to have jobs that are going to be sustainable in the long term, that are going to provide, long-term growth and sustainability for our community.
Thank you, Perry. Okay, we move on to the east. Rebuttal, okay. Councillor Nodell would like a rebuttal. She has 30 seconds.
Thank you. I've heard it said a couple times during this campaign that we shouldn't be, the city, should not be investing in projects like City Place. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that the city has not invested in City Place. City Place is a private development being developed entirely by private capital, and that the city is investing in better downtown infrastructure, streets, and sidewalks.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to the East District. Richard Dean, you will answer this question first. Another rebuttal, I'm sorry?
I don't know if I'm allowed.
You can. You haven't used your rebuttal card yet.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Perry Freeman is using her 30-second rebuttal.
I think the point about the City Place was that when the council was negotiating that agreement, they wanted, the people of the city wanted us to, wanted the council to include things like potentially a project labor agreement, which goes back to making sure that those are good paying, quality jobs. And that beyond that, there was a question on the table to increase the amount of affordable housing units. And we've talked a lot about affordable housing tonight, and that is, I think, some of the area of contention around the City Place agreement and negotiation.
Okay. Perry, thank you for your rebuttal. East District, again, Richard Dean gets to answer the question first. If elected, how would you support growing the downtown workforce?
I think Burlington has seen the flight of jobs from the downtown. We've seen significant employers leave and go out to the suburbs, cheaper place to do business when you're an office building, for example, office occupancy. I think what we need to do is work on providing the infrastructure that's necessary to support growth of jobs in the downtown. So that includes supporting projects like City Place that provide the opportunity for people to come and work here. And also that then provides a virtuous cycle where people who are working in the downtown are actually then shopping in the downtown. They're eating in the downtown. What they're doing is then supporting all those businesses that are part of that downtown ecosystem. And so making the infrastructure available, providing the incentives for people to be here, then provides that additional step to let people come and create a more vibrant and more rewarding economy for everybody.
Thank you, Richard. Jack Hansen, you get the final word.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it does connect back to the other issues that we've already talked about in terms of growing downtown workforce. It has to do with transportation and the ability for folks, even if they don't have a vehicle, to get downtown. But I think it also ties back to housing, because what I've seen is a lot of my friends who I went to UVM with have since left Burlington, who did, many of them did work downtown in the service sector while they were here, but the wages of a service job weren't enough to be able to keep up with housing costs on top of student loans. So we need to look at wages as well and find ways to bring a diversity of jobs, as Perry mentioned, and jobs that actually pay well and are able to keep up with housing costs while we look at how we can alleviate the cost of housing. But I would also echo Perry's thoughts about the green economy and creating job sectors within the universe of trying to address climate change in Burlington. I think that's going to be a major job creator over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Thank you, Jack. And the next question, it goes to the North District. Franklin Paulino, you will answer first. And that question is, if elected, what 2 actions would you take to strengthen and grow Burlington's South End?
Well, I think I was glad to hear, I do want to say that a quick plug. I think people are too quick to dismiss the new North End for development. So it's a hard question for me to answer. But I think the Burton, concert venue is a great idea. I think that making an office park in that area is a great idea. Providing the tools that we would need, the buildings, for a place where people can work, they can go see a show, being sensitive to the homeowners that have been there for years. But those are 2 ideas that I support. I think we need to make Burlington more business friendly for people to live and work. And they shouldn't just go to Williston and South Burlington.
Okay, thank you. And next, Keenan Christensen.
Yeah, I have to agree with with Franklin that we're too quick to dismiss the New North End, in particular because we need a lot of investments in the New North End. There's a number of neighborhoods, particularly around Curtis and Pleasant Avenue, that don't even have cell reception, and we're living in Burlington, and we need to fix that because folks won't stay in Burlington if they don't have access to high quality internet and high quality cell service. As far as the South End goes, the type of employers that have been leaving Burlington, I think, are the type of employers that are larger employers, but I think we're sort of missing the mark if we're just focusing on large employers. We have an incredible startup community here in Burlington. We have the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies, we have Study Hall, and we have the Karma Birdhouse. These great co-sharing spaces reduce the barriers for entry into starting a new business. You don't have to spend $300, $400, $500 on rent for an office. You can spend $30 in a co-sharing space, and you can see that attracts the new talent coming out of Champlain College and out of UVM to start and try out their new business. It's one of the reasons my husband was able to move here and start his business. So I think that we need to be investing in more co-sharing space down in the South End to continue to attract those types of jobs to Burlington.
Okay, thank you. And the final word, Erica Bundy Reddick.
Yeah, I want to first start by saying 0 times 0 equals 0. So if we have $0 to invest, that means we have $0 to build or do anything. So I always come back to economic development. The first thing that I would do is work with the 2 main colleges for sure, but any other academic institution who wanted to. And I would say, who's graduating with the most people graduating with whatever degree? And I said this before, like Champlain College has a game development program. Why doesn't EA Sports have a development facility in the South End? I mean, that's like obvious. Some of these things are not rocket science. We just have to take some time, sit back and go, what resources do we have and what do we need, and how do we make these resources fill this need? And I don't even need the last 10 seconds.
All right. And the final question in this topic goes to the South. Paco de Francis, you will lead. And that question is, what are the policy changes that you feel are necessary to support grand list growth or support downtown development?
Yeah, so I agree with Erica a lot on this topic that, grand list growth, we need to grow the grand list. We need to expand that tax base to, really have money and kind of, then it can become a virtuous cycle. Then we can, put Burlington on the map more and, not talk about things like the Amazon HQ2 prize, but, smaller things, smaller wins that we could really attract. There's a lot of excitement around biotech and this is the economy of the future, which is so much going to be it's going to be in AI, it's going to be tech-based, and there's a lot that we can do to attract that. So policy actions that we need to take, we need to deregulate to get there. So grand list growth, that is all real estate growth. We're talking about the South End, but entrepreneurs can't go to the South End if they can't live there, if we can't get affordable housing. So we need to talk about ending the housing ban that we have in the South End and allowing developers to build mixed-use, medium-density housing in the South End. That'll really expand the grand list. And that's not going to do anything with the art community because it'll be mixed use. There'll be art studios and housing.
Thank you, Paco.
I would like to use my rebuttal.
Okay, Erica, using your rebuttal.
It's actually not a rebuttal. It's an addition to that. I learned that 44% of the grand list is not taxable. And I don't know, and everyone that I've told that to is shocked. So that means 56% of the buildings in Burlington are paying 100% of the burden. And that falls on us as residents, And, I guess that's it. That's all I wanted to say. In case you didn't know, now you know.
Okay, thank you. And Mohammed Jafar, next.
So I would support policies that incentivize local business. So just local businesses that can start here rather than trying to milk tourists. A few examples: Gardner's Supply, 7th Generation, Lake Champlain Chocolates, Burton Snowboards. These are all local businesses that make Burlington what it is and that honestly, add a lot to the economy of Vermont in general. And so for me, I think incentivizing those local businesses so we're not asking people from other cities and other states to come in to create that economic development and that economic prosperity for us is very important. Who are we investing in? Are we investing in the shopping bag on North Street? Are we investing in the Himalayan market, the African market? These businesses that, as someone had mentioned earlier, are starting and kickstarting and booming at rates that we can't even imagine. I think it's really important that we teach those people that we do find them as a priority and that we do see them as important, structures in the very economy that we have. So
thank you,
local
Mohammed.
business.
Joan Shannon, Councillor Shannon, you get final word.
Thank you. I was the person who initiated zoning changes in the South End that actually allowed businesses like Dealer.com and VEIC and the redevelopment of that building to happen in the South End. And because prior to that, offices were not allowed in the enterprise district, nor were cafes or most of the things you see there today. So I think zoning is a really important piece of how we attract businesses and allow them to go in the places we want them to go. I also know that VEIC and other companies have left downtown in large part because they couldn't get parking downtown. And while we all want to get everybody out of their cars, it's still a problem for businesses who it's much more difficult for them to find parking for their employees downtown than it is if they build in the farmer's field. I also support eliminating the business personal property tax, which gives disincentive for businesses to have equipment in the city.
Thank you, Joan. Okay, we move on to our final area this evening. We have a rebuttal. Okay, Mohammed, with your rebuttal.
Just to go back to, who we invest in and who we prioritize, a lot of these issues are intersectional. First and foremost, we have to understand that. So housing, transportation, the economy, it's all intersectional. And when we don't deal with one situation, or when we deal with one situation not the right way, it affects a lot of other things. Everyone keeps mentioning dealer.com. Dealer.com creates websites for car owners so we can have more cars on our roads. So let's prioritize in a way that does see that we are bringing businesses that actually will bring about prosperity, because again, that's what we want, right? We want our Burlington to be a better place. I don't care about dealer.com because it doesn't create the kind of jobs that we want. It doesn't create the opportunities that we want.
Thank you. All right, final area of question, and then we will go on to some questions that were provided by the audience, and those will come right after this. This is concerning downtown vitality and public spaces. Burlington, as you know, is a mature and well-established city where less than 1% of the land area is considered to be vacant. 51% is considered green space, making locations for new development limited. This makes sound land use policy critical to the city's future. There are ways Burlington can grow. For example, where properties are underdeveloped, there are opportunities for growth through redevelopment and infill. How Burlington chooses to make use of our built infrastructure is important to the future of the city's vitality and overall livability. And the East will answer the first question. Jack Hansen. The question is, how should the city leverage the existing built infrastructure to support our needs for future growth?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is certainly about eliminating barriers. We talked about the accessory dwelling units. I think that's an important area where we can eliminate barriers to taking what we have existing and building upon it. Obviously, an important piece of that is also prioritizing, runoff concerns, and that needs to be built into any of this. So the accessory building units is one piece of it. I think finding more ways to build up is important as well, and making it easier for folks to be able to make improvements onto their properties. A lot of folks deal with issues around historic preservation that prevent them from making needed improvements to existing properties. So I think there's a lot of barriers that we can eliminate that will allow people to improve and develop within that existing space that we already have.
All right, thank you.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. How should the city leverage the existing built infrastructure to support our needs for future growth?
I hope some people know a guy by the name of Joe Minicozzi. And essentially what he does is he looks at economic modeling of downtowns. And what he can show is that dense building in the downtown and the tax revenues that it generates are really the engine that supports the rest of downtown. And the reason it does that is because it intensively uses the infrastructure that's available downtown. The streets, the sidewalks, the stormwater, the wastewater, the power, that's all very densely used. And with a lot of people using that, essentially what you get is tax revenue that exceeds the amount that it takes to run that. If you look everywhere else in the city, if you look at the neighborhoods that are distant, say out in the New North End, the revenues that come back from taxes there don't support the city. So the more effort we can make and the more barriers that we can remove and the more investments that we can make in our downtown, the greater support that we have for our tax base, and the less that we have to do and the less burden that will actually be on individual taxpayers.
All right, thank you, Richard. Okay, we move on to the North District. Keenan Christensen, you answer first. The question for you and your group is, do you support the need for additional infill and redevelopment in the city? If yes, where? If not, why?
Yeah, I think, we do need additional infill. In particular, we need to make sure that we're protecting not only the integrity of our shorelines, but making sure that, erosion is real and is happening, and it's a result of climate change. And one of the issues that we're going to have, particularly in our neighborhood, is our shorelines are rapidly deteriorating. And if we're not producing, if we're not increasing the infrastructure to protect our shoreline, either by, building more riprap into the shoreline to protect the erosion, we're going to end up with less and less literal space for us to build upon, and we're going to be losing housing in the New North End. that's why I really am a big proponent of protecting the infrastructure that we have in place while also upgrading the infrastructure. You know, we recently got a C that was then downgraded to a D when it came to the infrastructure in a Burlington and in Vermont generally. And so what I think we need to be doing is increasing the capacity of our sewer lines and our water lines so that we can actually grow and build upon the land that we do have, and so that we don't again end up with sewage in the lake.
Thank you, Keenan. Next up, Erica Bundy-Reddick with the same question.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Do you support the need for additional infill and redevelopment in the city? If yes, where? If not, why?
That is way too much to unpack in 60 seconds. Sure, we should have infill if it makes sense somewhere. I'm having a hard time because that's such a all over the place. We have to be thoughtful about it too, though. You know, you have some places with shorelines, like say in the Carolinas or in Florida, where it's eroding and they're spending millions and millions and millions of taxpayer dollars to ship in sand to keep the beach for those millionaires on their beach houses. And I can tell you that I'm not paying for that. If there's somewhere else in the city that we need it to make it so that we can build on it, then yes, I'm always absolutely going to say yes, assuming we're not filling in wetlands or we're going to, you know, protected land should be protected land if it makes sense for it to be protected land.
Thank you, Erica. And final word goes to Franklin Paulino.
So I think that our Burlington waterfront is, you know, there's a lot of development questions, and I think that our Burlington waterfront is what makes Burlington Burlington. And we need to protect it, and we need to be careful about what we put there and develop there. And so I think that when we talk about infill, it should be about really a question about accessibility and marketability of Burlington. And to me, development in the waterfront should be, you know, carefully scrutinized to create this what I feel is a beach culture in Burlington that I love, the bike path as well. So.
Okay, all right. And rebuttal, Richard Dean with a rebuttal. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not quite sure how we ended up talking about shorelines. The question is, how do we support infill development and where? And I think the answer is, and we've already heard it tonight, is in the downtown. There are amazing opportunities in underdeveloped and open lands within the downtown and sites within the downtown to build housing, to build places for people to work, to build places that people can enjoy. And that is where infill development needs to happen.
Thank you, Richard Dean, with your rebuttal. We move on to the South District with the question Mohammed Jafar will lead. And the question is, what policies and projects would you support to create vibrant and inclusive public spaces in Burlington that promote healthy lifestyles for people of all ages and abilities?
I would support policies that are inclusive of low-income communities. I would support policies that are inclusive of, I don't know, the huge population of homeless people we have living on Church Street. I would also support policies that do not criminalize people who are dealing with mental health and substance abuse, but actually find solutions. I think our biggest problem is that our priorities are just completely out of whack. So if we could redirect that and figure out how to help a lot of the people that are struggling with everyday things. People are struggling to eat every day. And so when we have all these glamorous developments, and you know, and some of them are necessary, are we really considering the accessibility of all of that? And are we considering who is able to reach those things? Because I personally don't think we are. So my policies and the policies that I support will include every single person in this room and in this city, because it has to.
Thank you, Mohammed. Joan Shannon, you get the second word.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. What policies and projects would you support to create vibrant and inclusive public spaces in Burlington and that promote healthy lifestyles for people of all ages and ability?
Okay, thank you. I just want to address the glamorous development. I think it's one of the reasons we have inclusionary zoning is to assure that any development includes some affordable housing in it, and that's an important thing for people to understand. An example of a project that I supported along with Councillor Dean was the Wildways project to actually give people access. As I think you mentioned, there's a tremendous amount of the area of Burlington that actually is open space and wild areas. And the Wildways project that Richard and I initiated together, and I would say he's really done the heavy lifting on, is it gives people of all income levels and everybody in Burlington who may not have access to wild places outside of Burlington, helps provide access through trails and signage that help people get into our wild spaces right here.
Thank you, Joan. And finally, Paco de Francis.
So I think first I'd like to talk about regulations and things that really enhance a lot of those developments. And inclusionary zoning, as well as parking requirements, as well as many others, are several of the things that are driving up cost of development and inhibiting, places like for example, the Rite Aid parking lot that Councillor Dean mentioned. The reason we're not seeing those things being redeveloped is because we have too many regulations in the downtown that are inhibiting that. And so to answer the public spaces piece, we need to think about our public spaces as ways that can benefit public health to improve the health of the population. That will really drive down our healthcare costs, and that again is a part of our affordability crisis is healthcare costs. So I'd look at projects that more protected bike lanes to get people out on bikes, as well as things like the gym, like the outdoor gym that we have down the waterfront. Get those into other areas of the city. Germany has a lot of those, and it really raises up the public health of the population.
Thank you, Paco. Okay, we move on to our final district in this area, downtown vitality and public spaces. Jared Carter, you will lead. And the question is, should Burlington undertake more development, especially in the downtown district? If so, how? If not, why?
Yeah, I think Burlington should undertake more development in the downtown district. I think an important part of that, though, is, and I haven't heard anybody mention it, maybe I'll get some more rebuttals out of this comment, but I think it's really important to maintain the downtown as a public space. And I'm talking about the downtown investment district that's going to be on the ballot shortly. I don't think the people of Burlington have any idea what's going on. I don't think it's been debated. I don't think it's been discussed. I think it's been rushed. And as a constitutional rights and civil rights attorney, I'm very concerned when we talk about turning over public spaces in any way to the management of a private entity, because when a private entity manages something, it means the Constitution doesn't apply. And nobody has put forth any evidence that I've seen indicating that the constitutional rights that are so vital to maintaining the downtown as the lifeblood, political and economic, of the city will be respected. So I think it's important to point that out.
Thank you, Jared. And Perry Freeman. Oh, we have a rebuttal from Keenan.
It's not really a rebuttal. I wholeheartedly agree with Jared Carter on this issue. I looked at the process that went into this. When I've been door knocking with my neighbors, the one issue that I talked about is, what is DID? And 99% of them had no idea what DID was or the consequences of that. And I am also an attorney in town who represents and protects folks' constitutional rights. And we're without a Bill of Rights that's been incorporated into this DID development. I have serious concerns about the protection of the First Amendment. And in addition, the fact that no one knows what's going on and no one has any idea about this process says something about the process that was used to engage the public.
Thank you, Keenan. Okay, next, Perry Freeman.
Yes, I do believe that we can continue to develop the downtown. I think the real question is development for who and for the benefit of whom. I think right now what we've seen is a lot of fast-tracked, large-scale development projects that are not really benefiting the many and are benefiting a few, and have not had great public process. So what I would really like to see in terms of development is a community-driven zoning, housing, and development process. And the reason for that is I honestly believe that people who live and work here should, deserve to be able to shape their community just as much as big businesses and big developers. And so, of course, we're going to continue to develop. I'm not anti-growth, but I'm pro-smart growth and fair growth and growth that has a good process and includes the public and the people who live and work here and can benefit from it.
Thank you, Perry. And Councillor Nodell, you get the final word on the topic, downtown vitality and public spaces. Should Burlington undertake more development, especially in the downtown district?
We do need more development in the downtown district. We also need to be sure that downtown remains an inclusive space and a space where everyone is welcome. Downtown should not be an enclave for the wealthy, and I have always opposed this. The city also can undermine constitutional rights. When we talked about the no trespass ordinance, when I first got on the city council, I sought outside legal counsel to understand the implications of that. So don't put that all on a DID. That issue is there now. I've worked hard on the updating of inclusionary zoning, and thank you, Councillor Shannon, for the shout out on that. It's going to make small infill housing projects downtown more economically viable, and we're going to get more housing downtown, more affordable housing downtown at all levels. And so I'm for inclusivity and development downtown.
Okay. And we do have a rebuttal from Jared.
Yeah, I appreciate Jane bringing up the Church Street no trespass ordinance. I was actually the attorney, along with another, that worked to challenge the constitutionality of an ordinance that authorized city officials to essentially banish people with no process from public space. And the reason we were able to challenge that is because the city and the people own the public space, own Church Street. I have real reservations and questions about what happens if a private entity, nonprofit or otherwise, manages and controls Church Street Marketplace, the economic and political beating heart of the city and the state.
Okay, thank you, Jared. We move on to questions, and I remind there are two councilors, I'm not sure who they are, or two candidates rather, that have not used the rebuttals, so you could use them during the questioning from the audience. And Kelly, I do have one question before we continue on, just the way that we're going to, the order rather.
Keep going. Yeah, keep going in the order you've been going.
Just go in the same order? Okay. Okay, so we will start off the way that we started then. We will go with the North District, which got the toss, or won at the beginning of the evening here. And Keenan Christensen, you get to go first. And the question from the audience, and the other members of your district will also have the same question. If elected, what actions would you take to address the needs of homeless people, especially veterans?
Yeah, so the issue of homelessness, in particular the homelessness problem when it comes to veterans is near and dear to my heart. My sister is a former Marine, my father is a former Army veteran, and it's something that I take very seriously. I think we need to have more spaces, more public spaces that are accessible to folks that are living on the street. I see no reason why we don't have more warming shelters for folks. When it is 0 degrees outside, we have folks sleeping in tents. That's inexcusable. I also think that we need to be engaging our community. One of the things that I would like to explore further is I have a guest room that, if someone needs space, if someone needs a place to rest, if someone needs to be warm, I can offer that space to them. And I know a number of other folks here who can do the same thing. We need to be coming together as a community. It is inexcusable that we have folks sleeping in the cold, and it is inexcusable that we have space available for them and we're not making it available.
Thank you, Keenan. And the same question for Erica Bundy-Reddick.
I think adding some kind of facility if we're talking about homeless vets in particular, I love the idea of opening up your home to people, and that's great if you can. I personally had a young man in my Airbnb who was a vet, and he was schizophrenic, and it became a very dangerous situation. Our vets have very special needs, and they need people who can actually help them with what they need. And I would strongly support some kind of a, I hate to say home because that sounds terrible, but a facility where they're going to get services for maybe finding a new job, mental health, medication, whatever it is they need. We need to have a safe place for them to go. And perhaps that's an extension of the VA here in Chittenden County. I don't know, but that's how I would address something like that.
Erica Bundy-Reddick, thank you. And the final is Franklin Paulino from the North District. Franklin.
So, as you know, many of you may or may not know, I'm a deputy state's attorney here in Chittenden for 4 years, and unfortunately, as a deputy state's attorney, you deal with the homeless population quite frequently. And I would say that one of the things that I'm strongly advocating for in my campaign is more mental health outreach crisis workers. Currently, Burlington has 4, and that's 24 hours a day. And too often, as a state's attorney, I'm getting paged for a call related to mental health that is we're paying for as taxpayers anyway for police officers to deal with, and that's not just one police officer. Usually it's 2, because police officers obviously do everything with backup as they should. And the other thing that we need to bring attention to is that Howard Center workers are grossly underpaid, and we need a wet shelter, and so that homeless people have an option who can't get sober or stay sober. As well as I've spoken about it before. Oh, I see my time's up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Franklin. Okay, and our next group is South. Mohammed Jafar will answer this question. Again, these are questions that were given to us by the audience prior to starting this evening. And the question for all of you in District 2 is, in the South District rather, is, do you think the deteriorating condition of our downtown has affected livability, and how will the Downtown Improvement District address that? Going first, Mohammed Jafar.
So I do think that our downtown is deteriorating, and in a really heavy capacity as well. However, I'm not certain that the Downtown Improvement District is inclusive enough to address. I think in terms of the deteriorating infrastructure of it all, I think yes, it does. But again, going back to that idea of being inclusive and making sure that we're not privatizing everything and making it so that those that we deem as not belonging are being criminalized and kind of pushed aside is very, very important, because it's really easy to marginalize groups and to say he's homeless, she's homeless. It's really, really easy to do that. And so while I do think that it does rebuff our downtown space, it's just not inclusive enough for me. The process is not transparent enough for me. And everyone's voice isn't involved. Everyone is not at the table. And there are a lot of people, again, that just are being left behind with this process and with that development.
Thank you, Mohammed. And next up, Joan Shannon. We have a rebuttal, okay? Frank?
So I think that I've heard a lot of talk about the Downtown Improvement District and it being a really scary thing, and there's some light should be shed on the subject that I think everybody's happy with the Church Street Marketplace, and the Downtown Improvement District is just an expansion of that. And what we need to be mindful of is that other cities are building downtowns, such as South Burlington specifically, and we need to be competitive. No private assets are being transferred. There's going to be 4 citizens on this commission from the public that are not going to be tied to these businesses. They're going to be able to have a voice, and I'm sure there's going to be further due process. Thank you.
Thank you. And rebuttal from Jack.
Yeah, I would argue that it's not just an expansion of the Church Street Marketplace, and if it was, maybe I would support it, but it's not. It's turning it over to a nonprofit entity that would govern it. Yes, we would have the ability to oversee and appoint as city council some members of that oversight body, but it is no longer Church Street Marketplace. It is no longer a public entity. It is a private nonprofit, and that's where my concern around the Downtown Improvement District comes in.
Thank you, Jack. And remind you, all rebuttals have been used. So we move on. Councillor Shannon, you have the next word.
Thank you. I think to say that there's any element of the downtown improvement district that criminalizes people is just fear mongering. It also is not privatizing. It says in the language of the downtown improvement district, the city will control the use of the public's right-of-way, including streets, sidewalks, and other publicly owned spaces within the DID. I don't think that the downtown is deteriorating, but I think it's being renovated, and sometimes things get worse before they get better. So there is a lot going on downtown right now, a lot of construction, and that happens after, we needed to do that. So I support the downtown improvement district. I think that it's an opportunity to use private funds for public benefit without privatizing the downtown, because we are still going to own those spaces and we still can regulate those spaces, and we will have oversight. The city council approves both the budget and the management plan for the downtown improvement district.
Thank you, Joan. And Paco de Francis, the final word.
So I do think the downtown is declining, and it is kind of falling apart in some ways in the infrastructure, especially the public infrastructure that both visitors and renters, as well as employees who work downtown, would use on a daily basis. I think the DID will definitely improve the livability and will help will be able to drive a lot of new investment in the downtown that otherwise either individual taxpayers, residential taxpayers, as we heard, it's only 56% of us, or 56% of the land area are residential taxpayer, or pay those taxes or are not exempt, and and the DID will do a lot of allow those businesses within the district to cover their own costs. We also need to do more than this, the DID, to improve the downtown and improve accessibility. And then talking about the deteriorating downtown, it comes with we need wider sidewalks. You walk down College Street, down towards Battery Street, and the whole greenbelt is completely the grass is all dead and it's compacted because the sidewalks are too narrow, so that people end up walking on the grass.
Thank you, Paco. And we move on now to Central District. Jared Carter, you will lead. And the question from the audience is, how would you work to bring down the property tax burden, which can make it challenging, especially for older residents, to age in place and housing unaffordable?
You go ahead. Yeah, no, you go ahead. I think she was actually up, but however. Okay, sure. I'll run with it. I think there's a couple of things that we can do, because the tax burden is significant on seniors, young people, working people, new Americans, and I don't break people up into those silos. I think it does a disservice. I think the senior who's living on a fixed income faces the same problems as the student that's drowning in student debt, trying to rent an apartment or trying to buy a house and pay the property taxes. So I think intergenerational solidarity is critical, and I just made that term up. I'm trademarking it.
Wow.
Now I've lost my train of thought. But I think a couple of things that we can do in all seriousness is we can look at other revenue streams. And again, I don't pretend to have all the answers to these things, but I know that there's a lot of yachts from Montreal that come in. I think we could find some revenue there. I know there's a lot of high-end legal services as a lawyer that people are spending money on. I think we could find some revenues there, and I think that would go towards stabilizing and bringing down.
Harry Freeman, you're next.
Yeah, I agree. This is something that we hear from folks, and it's unfortunate that we often have a tax system that places an undue burden on middle and lower income folks, including the property tax. And I agree that we need to find alternative, revenue and fees and funding streams that are progressive, that are fair. And that's really, I think, my focus and my emphasis in building out a tax system is making sure that it's fair and equitable, and that, like I said, that middle and lower income folks are not overly taxed, that aging seniors aren't taxed, young people with, exorbitant student loans, these folks are not at a place to be propping up, our systems. It needs to be the wealthy who pay their fair share, and anyone else with, additional funding streams.
All right, thank you. And Councilor Nodell.
Yes. So when we think about the property tax burden in Burlington, we need to remember that in our property tax bills, about 2/3 of that bill is going for the schools, and 1/3 of it is on the city side. The schools have income sensitivity driven by state law, and so the school tax, there's a little bit more of a mechanism for ensuring tying your tax bill to your ability to pay. We don't have that with the municipal property tax, and that's why it's so important to get alternatives to property tax to which others have spoken. One example is the gross receipts tax. We can't go too far with that, but that is a way to tax the people who come here and stay in our beautiful hotels and eat in our great restaurants. So you want to go where there's more ability to pay. Another example is the franchise fee. Looking forward, this is going to be a major challenge for the council and for the mayor in years to come.
Thank you, Councillor. And our final question goes to the East District. Councillor Dean, you go first. The question is, if you don't win, how will you serve the community? This is just the luck of the draw. Don't look at me. If you don't win, how will you serve the community? Maybe you want it to go all the way around, but
Since that's a hypothetical, I have spent the last 2 years working on the Burlington Wildways project that Councillor Shannon and I started. It's something that no matter what happens, I plan to stay involved with that because it is so important to conserving the wild spaces and this wealth of treasure of wild spaces that surround us. I will stay involved with that. I have been working with the VFW on their existing facility. As an architect, I've been able to help them think about how to renew that facility, what the resources might be that they could find to have that happen. I certainly am committed to doing that. I am, a person, as an architect, I'm involved with this city. I understand that it's a growing thing, and I would be involved in in whatever aspect that I can be to support the city in its growth, and in realizing all the potential that's here to support my fellow citizens as well.
thank you, Councillor. And Jack Hansen, you get the final word tonight.
Yeah, so I'll continue to engage with local politics, certainly, regardless of the outcome. And then also continuing to engage with a lot of the amazing organizations that we have here that I've been involved with. And some of the ones that I've been most involved with are 350 Vermont, which is a climate justice organization, Circles of Support and Accountability, which is a really great program dealing with folks who have been incarcerated and working to reintegrate them back into the community. It's a program that I did for 1 year, and it really provides that network of support and accountability that allows people to get back on their feet who otherwise would have had a very high risk of reoffending, as well as other climate organizations like the Sierra Club that I've been a core organizer with. So I think it's part of who I am, and it's not going to stop no matter whether I win or lose.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you all for coming this evening. Again, thanks to the BBA and AARP for giving me an opportunity to get back in front of a microphone where I think I kind of belong. And I want to give special thanks to the timekeeper here, Bob Henneberger. Very important job. And with that said, the candidates will still be around to answer questions. But I'll turn the microphone over to Kelly Devine from the BBA. Charlie Papillo out. Have a great night, everybody. Good seeing you.
Thank you so much, Charlie. You did a fantastic job. Thanks to all the candidates for coming out and for all of you to come out. We have some dessert over there, and I think I clearly marked the coffee, the decaf, and the hot water so we don't get anybody in trouble tonight. Local elections and local politics are really important to all of us. Thank you all candidates for all the time you've put into informing yourselves about the issues. As a final word, I'll say thank you to our partners at AARP. They're doing amazing work locally and at the state. They're great to work with. And just encourage you to encourage yourselves and all your friends and neighbors to get out and vote on March 5th. And early voting is open now.